The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And A.J. Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right, welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me as usual, and actually on time this week, AJ Applegarth. What's up, man?
Big things are coming. Big things are coming.
Big things are coming.
Start of a new future.
Yeah. All right, so we got a big show tonight. We're talking fantasy football consistency, a topic near and dear to my heart. And, of course, we'll bring on Bob Long for that. But first, remind you guys, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Periscope, iTunes, wherever you listen. We appreciate the support. So go ahead and do that. It helps us out. But let's first get to some news and notes. Got some good ones, man. So obviously, A.J. Derrius Guice arrested last week, turned himself in, domestic assault, strangled the woman or whatever. Like, just bad news. And of course, Washington did the right thing, and they a lot of teams nowadays will kind of, give it a few days, see what happens, whatever. But Washington really had no choice with everything that just went on with them. So they cut him immediately. I'm not really going to focus on Guice here, but I want to ask you, who do you think is next up here? Who do you think is the prime beneficiary? We got Peterson, we got the rookie Gibson, and we got Bryce Love, who was drafted last year. Of course, he stuck the whole year on the IR after... was it ACL or something like that? The year before in college. Who's the primary beneficiary?
I don't remember what that injury was for him. I think it was a knee injury though. But I think AP is still going to get the main, starting gig at least for the first few weeks of the season, and then they're going to see what the other guys have. In my opinion, at least, I do like Gibson's upside. So I think he could get in, but overall, I think this is just going to be an ultimate committee for right now until they figure out what's going on. But yeah, definitely interesting turn of events for sure. Not the first time we've heard this, unfortunately.
Yeah, he came in with character issues. That's why he fell to where he did in the draft, and he seemed like a pretty good guy. Like every interview he had, he seemed like a good guy, just but unfortunately not. So I agree with you, though. I think AP is going to be the big winner here. I think he's got, the role kind of locked up. Gibson's a guy who's intriguing, but I'm not really sure I'm buying into the skill set. The guy really wasn't a running back in college. He was kind of a Percy Harvin-ish type of player. Maybe he's better. I don't know enough about him, really, to be honest with you, but I don't really like those gadget type guys. A lot of them don't really work in the NFL. So will he make some plays? Sure. But I'm more in on AP. I'm actually more intrigued by Bryce Love. I saw some stat that he rushed for 2,000 yards in his junior year in college, and he had the least number of carries to ever do so in college. So the guy's got talent. It's just a matter of if he can get healthy and get right. So I stash Love on a lot of my taxi squads in my dynasty leagues, and I'm kind of hoping he can figure this out. Excuse me. Other news: George Kittle got his extension. Big money for a tight end, 5 years, $75 million. I want to say 18 or 20 mil was guaranteed. So a lot of money there. Gotta ask you though, man, is it worth it as a tight end to give somebody this much money? Guy's a baller.
Yeah, he is a baller. He's still pretty young. I think he's got, obviously he's in his prime now, I think. So within that 5 years,
for sure,
I think he's going to be, all prime and then starting downhill. So it's good from that aspect. I do think it's a lot of money for a tight end, though. I don't know if I would have bought into it, but I guess it just goes to show San Fran wants to focus on, playing him and paying him. So He's the key point. I mean, in my opinion, he's the best player on their offense.
He's definitely the
flat
best
out
receiver on that offense. But I mean,
think
he's a good
the best
blocker
player
too.
on the offense. I mean, Jimmy G is okay. He's a game manager. He's decently consistent from that standpoint. But yeah, Kittle's there. He's the main go-to. I mean, the receivers. Debo's good. He's coming up, but he's injured. The other guys they have are young, and who knows? So unproven.
I'm okay with the money. Hopefully with maybe possibly deflated caps coming in, it doesn't kill them, but we'll see what happens here. But I think it'll be okay. Last piece of news, maybe not super exciting, but Lamar Miller signed with the Patriots. I mean, is he going to get the job? Is this now going to be Damian Harris's job? And I think this spells concern for Sony Michel, in my opinion. I think that's the reason why they signed him. I mean, what is his impact? I mean, there's James White there too. I mean, how does this impact all these guys?
I mean, this is a ridiculously deep running back room in New England, and it always seems to be. And it's that next man up, week to week game plan that Bill Belichick loves to do and throw out there. So I think he's going to have his weeks where he's really good and helping the team and helping fantasy owners. But then he's going to have those weeks where he disappears, and it's going to be James White, or it's going to be Rex Burkhead, or it won't be Brandon Bolden this year. But I think
Right.
That's part of why they went and did that, did this move, because they knew Bolden was sitting out. So, he's had those really good games. Not huge on stat window, but he's just there. He's a body that gets the play when it needs to happen. So I think Miller's definitely gonna eat into some of that. Michelle, I think it's definitely gonna hurt him the most, in my opinion. But at the same time, it could be, is he really going to be healthy? Is his foot still more of an issue than what we really think it's going to be, or what we thought initially, and that he would be returning early, and now he's not?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. All right, so without further ado, let's bring on Bob Lung, author of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for the last 5 or 6 years. Sorry if I totally botched that, Bob. You can fix me. I think you might have been doing it longer. He's also owner of Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Bob, you there, man?
How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you back. It's always one of my favorite shows of the year. But
Thank you.
before we jump into things, let's have a little fun, man. Let's do our beer of the week.
Beer.
All right, since you are the guest, let us know what you are drinking this week, my friend.
So I'm old compared to you guys. And so I do mostly hard liquor now. So I'm a Captain Morgan guy. So got my Captain Morgan, which has a special orange and vanilla flavor this year that they came out for a summer drink. So I'm mixing it with my orange soda, and it's kind of like drinking a dreamsicle. So I know it sounds a little girly. I'm not going to lie, but it's summer, and so it is what it is. Normally, I'm just a Captain Morgan Diet Coke, so kind of boring. But when you're old, that's the way things happen.
It's all good, man. We don't discriminate here.
Absolutely. I love me some Captain on my non-beer drinking nights as well. So cheers to that. I myself am drinking the Commonwealth Brewing Company's Sovereign Lotus and Sabro Triple India Pale Ale. I think this thing is a 10%er, Joe, something like that.
It's close to it. Yeah, I've had
high.
that. I've had that a few times.
Remember.
It's good, man. I enjoy it.
Yes, 10%. So be right there with you, Bob.
Definitely tasty. So, all right, I am drinking a Aslan Beer Company Mind the Hop Double India Pale Ale. I don't know what the percentage on this is actually. Like around 9.4. So hey, we're all hitting it pretty hard. So yeah, this one's good, man. I don't actually know what hops are in it, but it's a smooth beer. Very very hoppy, that's for sure. Does hit you pretty hard, but I needed it after today with both kids driving me absolutely bonkers. So drink up, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
So All right, let's jump into this, man. Consistency, like I've said before, this is a topic that I love. Something that I, didn't really study as much as you, but something that I always kind of looked at when I drafted, many, many years ago. And then when I saw your guide, I was like, oh my gosh, like I had to talk to this guy because this is exactly what I've been like telling people forever, it feels like. And somebody finally wrote something about it that makes more sense than what I've been telling people. So, so first things first, let's just let everybody know, let everybody kind of know what the book's about and where you can find it and all that kind of stuff.
So basically you can find it on, Amazon. If you're a hard copy kind of person, go to Amazon.com, you can get it there. And, and then, if you want a PDF or if you want a different version like that, you can certainly get those on it as well. Big Guy Fantasy Sports is the site that will has a PDF version, all the updates, all the tier draft list, and all the tools you need about consistency. It will certainly help you with the, putting in your own scoring method, finding out who's the most consistent players, in your league from last year. So definitely do that. Definitely check it out and, appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
So last year, we know you introduced the prop bet tool, something that we checked out a few times over the year to see how it kind of matched up with some betting props. But from your own viewpoint, like how did it perform last year?
It did well. I mean, for the last 3 years, it's been nominated as one of the finalists for best fantasy football publication by the Fantasy Sports Writers of America. And, in 2018, it won actually the award for best publication, but I'm just honored to be nominated. I mean, I'm going, guys like CBS Sports and RotoWire and, Football Diehard. So it's hard to, argue, that being nominated is certainly an honor in itself. So.
Yeah, that's huge to be able to get that going there, and congrats on the nominations and awards and everything. It's always good to see. So, excuse me. So, is there anything else new that you've added this year then?
The only thing I added new this year was it was kind of a weird thing. So these gentlemen from the country of Brazil started their own website showing people down in Brazil how to play fantasy football and all that kind of good stuff. And they loved my consistency stuff. I sent them a free PDF so they could look at it and check it out. They loved it. And then they asked me if they could write some articles and do some calculations for IDP, or individual defensive players, for those who haven't done it before. Yep. And, they put this information together and they showed me the consistency of the IDP players. And I don't play in a lot of IDP leagues, so certainly wasn't in my wheelhouse. And I was honored that they, used my calculation formula. And so I asked them if I could put their article that they wrote about the top IDP consistency players from the year before in my guide. And they were honored and said, sure, certainly. And so we did that. And, so that's new this year, even though I didn't really come up with it. I was just honored to be able to share this internationally known now consistency stuff. And awesome. They were happy to have it in it. So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Awesome. So what is your xConsistency? Let's go down that little road there.
Yeah. So what xConsistency is I had, there was a lot of times where you have guys who were fairly consistent, but they only played, let's say, half the season because they got hurt. Evan Ingram's a perfect example last year. Matthew Stafford, perfect example. And so, when you're trying to compare total points, you can say, well, they're consistent and that's good enough. But, how did they do on a per game basis based on that consistency? So I created xConsistency, which is a lot like XERA, in baseball. And what it does is it takes the average fantasy points per game, multiplies it times their consistency percentage, and it gives them this xConsistency number so that you can see a guy like Matthew Stafford would have been in the top 10 if he played every game, both consistency-wise and total points-wise. And it kind of puts the two together to give you a little bit of a different snapshot, but also kind of gives you a truer vision of how good that person could have been last year had they played all the games, that point. So
a little follow-up to that, like, which one do you use more when you're looking at it, like consistency or the xConsistency? Like, which one do you value more?
I mean, I'll be bored, and I'm going to say both. Because they both have their spot. It depends on the player. Like I said, a guy like Matthew Stafford, I need to look at the xConsistency to kind of see where he fell out, versus, a guy that played all 16 games, like Odell Beckham Jr. So, that's the kind of stuff I use all the tools. And that's what I try to tell people is you don't just focus in on that consistency number, the xConsistency or total points, look at this as a whole and make the decisions when you're comparing these teams, side by side, or these players side by side. So.
Makes sense. All right. So a question we've never asked before, but I noticed you had a little DFS section in there. Is this valuable for cashing in DFS?
It is, because using consistency, and especially the tool, if you look at the consistency guide, there's a profile for each player. And at the bottom of each profile section is a little thing called the historical consistency. And it's basically showing how they did in games where they're home versus away, maybe at home against a top 10 defense against the pass versus, a bad defense against the pass. And by using that tool, you can identify some players that may be cheap from a DFS standpoint, but might have a game situation, or I call it a game scenario, because they're playing, let's say, there's guys like Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees that when they're playing at home against a top 10 defense, they destroy them. They just literally destroy them. And so people will be like, oh, they're playing against San Francisco this week. Okay, well, this is where they succeed at. So you could put that guy in there knowing that, okay, I'm getting a little bit cheaper price, and I can use that money for maybe a higher upside guy that might have a huge week, like a Mike Evans or a Godwin or a Deshaun Jackson at dirt cheap, but can have those 2-3 touchdown games. So that's what the guys use it for. So I'm not as much into the DFS world as they are. So Colby Conway and Ron Rigney from the Big Guys site do that every week. They do a podcast. They put together their favorite DraftKings and FanDuel lineups for the week based on the consistency, based on that information. And so, yeah. So it's worked out well for them. They won some money.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, I know you in DFS. I'm not a big DFS guy either, but from the little I've played, and I've talked to some pretty big names in the DFS game, from what I get is that you do need to play, obviously, some home run, especially in the GPPs and things like that. But, like, you do need those guys that are just going to get you points,
Right.
Like the reliable guys that can just get you points week in and week out. You can't hit home runs on everybody. So you need those reliable guys, and yeah, this would be a great tool. It seems like to find those guys week in and week out. So it makes total sense to me. So when it comes to consistency, like I'm a big rankings guy. How much are you factoring in consistency to your draft rankings? I mean, like, you can't go around looking at just your consistency and rank off of that, because otherwise you'd have Golden Tate over Kenny Galladay. Like,
Right.
Nope, never gonna happen, right?
Yep, I got you.
At least I wouldn't think so. But
No.
like, how much does consistency factor into your draft rankings?
Well, it certainly makes it certainly changes players that others are high on, or vice versa, that I might view differently because of the consistency. For example, let's talk about Golden Tate. I could pretty much guarantee you that Golden Tate is not in the top 36 of anybody else's rankings out there. Probably not. But he's 36th on mine. I mean, he might be close, but I'd be surprised if anybody else has him in the top 36.
It's like a PPR half. I'm curious. I'm going to go look at mine now.
Amari Cooper, I have at 18. A lot of people have him in the top 12.
Oh,
Well,
I've got a 15 and a half, so I'm with you there.
Right. So again, some people, love Amari Cooper and always put him in the top 12 and, all this happy stuff. And, this last year was his best season ever in consistency when it was only 63%, which ranked him like 28th. So, that's the kind of stuff that I adjust my rankings based on that, which makes it look different than others would. Like I have Julian Edelman at number 13. I bet you nobody else has Julian Edelman in the top 20, maybe 25, because he's always 75% consistent. He's always one of those guys that, just catches the ball every week. And with Cam there, you got to believe that he's going to be looking at Julian all the time, just like Tom Brady was.
Yeah, I've got around the 25 range. So, yeah, top 20s, top 15s, pretty steep price for me.
Right. So that's the adjusting that I'll make from a consistency standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the fact that it is the unknown that Brady was just feeding him the ball left and right, and Cam will do some different things. So it's a bit of an unknown. So we don't know if he's going to repeat that consistency. But otherwise, like other years in the past, like, yeah, I'm right there with you. I had him in the top, 15, 12 almost every year. Like last year, I think I was one of the highest rankers of him on Fantasy Pros, I'd
have to look, but I'm pretty sure that the year that who was the guy that had to come in and play 12 games for Brady when he got hurt? Matt Castle. I'm pretty sure
Edelman a couple different years
was just as consistent. So
I mean, big contract.
I mean, can Cam do it? Absolutely.
Right. He loves short passes. It's his specialty, dumping the ball off to James White, short passes to Julian Edelman. I don't think anything changes. Plus, Belichick's still the guy in charge. Who's going to call the plays?
Exactly.
He'll keep feeding the guys that got him where he did in the past, whether it's Brady or not.
I do keep moving Edelman up every time I do my rankings. So I don't think he'll get as high as 13 for me.
Right.
But I wouldn't be shocked if he creeps into the top 20 for me by the end of the preseason here. But here's some good things from camp about Cam and everything. We see some video at least. I don't know. We're not going to see the games, unfortunately, but that's going to be it. So, the other thing that factors in the rankings for me is guys moving teams and, guys having their role change, right? Big time, So, how do you – I know their consistency from last year is one thing, but, like, how do you factor in that consistency from last year on a brand new situation?
Well, what I usually do, when people ask me that question is, look at the past, look at both what that player has done for the teams he's played for, and how is the new team different? Are the schemes the same? Is quarterback talent the same? Is the talent around him the same? There's a lot of factors to look at. So, somebody like Cam, I mean, he's got enough talent that, he could get the job done. He wasn't really all that consistent when he was in Carolina. In fact, when he won the league MVP, he was only 69% consistent that year. He wasn't the top overall consistent quarterback. But, he did what he did. He certainly, won a lot of games and, got him where they needed to get. So, I just look at all that kind of stuff and make that decision, based on, all the changes around them, whether, if there's somebody that they gained or added to or lost from the line, from offensive line, that certainly will help or hurt a quarterback or a running back. So, those are the kind of things. I look at everything just like everybody would out there. You want to look at every angle to make sure that there's a reason for them to be consistent or not be, depending on the scenario around them.
So keeping in that same kind of mode there, you got guys moving teams or changing roles. But what about guys that are injured? So how do you calculate the consistency for the players who were injured the year before?
Well, again, that's where the xConsistency comes into play. So by utilizing that and taking the average points per game, looking at their consistency when they played, that gives you an idea of how consistent. Now, that's not saying they're going to be that consistent for a full season, but at least gives you an idea if they've got potential. Like Evan Ingram and Matthew Stafford last year both went 7 for 8 in their first 8 games. Of course, then they both got hurt. So at that point, you can say, now, are they going to go 14 of 16 or 14 of, in a full season? Probably not. But it shows you that there's consistency when they were playing and when they're healthy. So that makes them a great value because people are kind of sleeping on on both of them this year.
So follow up to that then, what about if the guy was injured for the whole season or he played one game?
Yeah,
something like that. It's a little bit more of a calculation, I feel like.
Yeah, well, and it's also how are they looking in training camp? Like I remember last year when Emmanuel Sanders came back from his injury, and I was getting him dirt cheap, but I had seen the videos of him running and cutting that he had taken and put on the internet, and I'm like, if he gets run that well now, then he must be in good shape because it was like July, and he came back from I think ACL or maybe it was hamstring or not hamstring, maybe it was the back of your leg. I just went brain dead. I've even had this injury. I can't think of it.
Achilles?
Achilles. Thank you.
Oh.
So, he and he came back well and he, did good enough to be signed by the Saints and will be playing there as the wide receiver 2 this year. So definitely, a good scenario to watch for. A.J. Green's one that I'm really high on this year. And I've been getting it, almost dirt cheap value based on what he normally would go for. And he's looking great in camp. They're raving about his explosiveness and his cutting, and he feels like he's 100%. And, he's going to be a big benefit to Joe Burrow. That's for sure.
Yeah. Big question for him is, can he stay healthy? Because he hasn't done it. We talked about that on our AFC North preview show. So that's a big if. So
Right.
So next question here actually comes from one of our writers, Mark Strasberg. He was wondering, and a great question, by the way, because we're, best ball is starting to take off big time.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at best ball, it's a total different ball game. Like consistency is good, up top, right?
Mm-hmm.
But later in your drafts, you're clearly not getting very super consistent guys, but like who are some of these guys that you look at that are maybe the worst consistent or somebody that from your list that you normally wouldn't target but would in best ball?
I mean, anybody that has high total points from the past years, but consistency wise hasn't been there as a star. And Amari Cooper's number 1 on my list. The Deshaun Jacksons, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he was top 10 last year, but was only 38% consistent. Will Fuller, he's going to have a 50-point game and then not do anything the rest of the year. Aaron Jones, obviously, he's a guy that, put up a lot of points, but wasn't all that consistent doing that, at least not as consistent as he was in total points. So it's it's those kind of players, the high points, low consistency that are good best ball, but those are the kind of guys you really want to get late. I mean, you don't want to spend an early draft pick for an Amari Cooper in best ball if you don't have to. I'd rather spend and get a consistent player early in the draft and then spend my money in best ball on like rookie guys like Jerry Jeudy and Rager and Brian Edwards and those kind of guys that certainly have the ability to put up some big numbers down the road, in games, but may not be there for you every week.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth about Cooper. I was like, I get that he's got that huge ceiling, and he's not the most consistent guy, although last year was way better than he's ever been, it feels like. Mm-hmm. But he's still just too inconsistent for his price range because there's guys that going right around him who can do just as well overall and be more consistent. So It's like, I'm not buying him still where he's going. So I'm going to let everybody have him in my drafts. You can have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of Rieger and those guys, the rookies, let's talk about them a little bit. You've got a topic in the guide here, rookies versus consistency. And your answer is typically that they're too inconsistent. So that makes sense. But since they have no consistency rating as of playing in the actual NFL, how do they get mixed into your rankings?
Well, as it says in that article, almost 92% of the guys have been drafted in the first 4 rounds at the fantasy positions have not earned over a 60% consistency rating in their first year. And so that just kind of tells you where these guys stand. Yes, there's going to be guys that have great opportunities like Barkley and Zeke and some of them to come in. But, just because they're a stud in college doesn't mean they're going to be a stud in the NFL, especially in their first year. So that's the kind of thing so I ranked them probably a lot lower than most will. I mean, I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire down in the 30s until Damian Williams dropped out. So, and I know a lot of people had him a lot higher. I just wasn't buying into it. Yeah, he hasn't proved anything. Plus, I thought he was going to be a backup to Damian Williams for a while.
Yeah.
So now I have him in the top 12 because obviously he's playing for Kansas City. But that's a rarity. He's got an open shot. When Kareem Hunt had that open shot, he obviously took it and literally ran with it. So that's definitely a good choice for CEH to be there, and he's a good pick. The question is are you going to take a first round pick on him when you can take an Austin Eckler that is going to be super talented and consistent? So yeah, that's where it makes it's tough when you have to decide between a rookie and a veteran like that.
Yeah, definitely agree there. I tend to fade the rookies more often than not. It's got to take a special guy. Like I was all over Saquon the first year, late in the first round. Right. CEH doesn't scream special to me. He's in a great situation. Don't get me wrong, especially now. But yeah, I'm with you. Like maybe I'm just playing it safe and call me whatever you want, but I'm probably taking the Ecklers and the Drakes and stuff like that over top of CEH, just because I feel safer doing it.
Right.
I think they're more reliable.
Mm-hmm. Especially with running backs in general. I mean, we kind of saw this shift as in power, if you will, for the wide receiver when PPR became more widespread. And the running backs kind of fell off a little bit. But now I feel like running backs are back, being that main go-to player that you want to get. Mm-hmm. So myself, I'd rather look at somebody that I know is going to be there, know that's going to get the plays and get the ball and get the points for me and has in the past, as opposed to some of these rookies, even though the situation is nice there for CEH. So moving on with that, though, name one surprise or maybe two at each major position that you think will either exceed or fall short of their current ADP.
All right. Well, I wrote a list of one exceed and one fall short for each position. So you're
all right.
Oh yeah. So we can start with the quarterbacks. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. We'll start with the quarterback. So who will exceed ADP? Matthew Stafford, ADP currently 10th round. Like I said last year, he was. He actually, if he would at the fantasy points per game through the first 8 games, he would have been second overall in total points at 399. He would have been behind Lamar Jackson, but ahead of everybody else, including Dak. So love him. I think he'll exceed expectations. Aaron Rodgers is at 812. His consistency last year was 38%. There's no way he's going to exceed that. Now, he might be top 10 in total points like he was last year, but consistency-wise, he's going to kill you. So don't go there. The running back position, Raheem Mostert, 503. I'm all over Raheem. Love this guy. In the 9 games last year, or actually the last 6 games of the year, he went 6 for 6 in consistency, averaged 17.5 fantasy points a game. So, and that doesn't even include the playoffs.
Yeah, so you're not worried at all that like the backfield's getting healthy and like all 4 guys might be there? No? All right, interesting.
No, they gave him the money because they know he is the man.
They literally just came out, like somebody came out and said that it's no guarantee that Mostert is the starter.
Yeah, well, and you know what? Shanahan will say that all day long. But if you look at the last 6 games and the playoffs, the guy that had almost twice as many, if not 3 times as many touches in those games was Mostert. Yes, Tevin Coleman's involved. Yes, Breida was involved. Yes, there's Jarrett McKinnon too, but he'll sneeze and break his leg, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Mostert is the man. And here's the thing: you can get Mostert as your RB3 for your team. That's the best part. You could certainly get him as your RB3, especially if like I've done where I went number 1, I take McCaffrey and then come back and I might take Fournette and Mostert and go 3 straight running backs. I feel like I'm set at that point. Love that. The guy that I'm not all in on at the 112 position is the Drake. I love the Drake. Don't get me wrong, but his consistency in the second half wasn't as good. He had some very, very big games, but he wasn't as consistent as you think. His big games were against the Browns, and I mean, he did have the big game against the 49ers. I get that, but yeah, two of them. But he definitely. I think he's a very good player. I just don't know if he's a first round. I think he's going to fall short of that ADP. Wide receiver, I already talked about A.J. Green. He's going in the 6th round. Wide receiver 27. He'll easily be top 15 if he stays healthy, and that's what we expect will happen. And then falling short, Amari Cooper. We've already talked ad nauseum of him.
And last year and the year before.
And last year and the year before. Yeah, in fact, somebody on Twitter created a hashtag fantasy locust is his nickname. That's my favorite.
Nice. I know that guy.
Tommy Moe. So anyway, exceeding for tight ends. Jack Doyle is going in the 13th round. Just 2 years ago, before Eric Ebron was in Indianapolis, he was actually in the top 10 in both total and consistent. And now he's got Phillip Rivers, who loves his tight ends, and there's no Eric Ebron in the way. I've drafted him as my backup in every league, and I might be starting him as my flex a lot. I might end up, trading my top tight end, whoever I do draft, maybe. We'll see. Falling short, Zach Ertz. He's going in the 5th round. Everybody still thinks he's part of the elite top 3. He's not. Dallas Goedert was as consistent as he was last year at 67%. They both had the same amount of clutch games. Yes, he scored more points than Dallas Goedert, but Dallas Goedert was just as consistent with the lack of points that he had, getting around 10 points a week, while Ertz was kind of up and down. And, he's getting 15 a week, which is good. And I like Zach Ertz, but I just feel like, you're taking him in the 5th round when you could get in your, 3rd receiver, maybe a top quarterback or a top, 3rd wide receiver, maybe if you're loading up on wide receivers. So that is my exceeds and fall shorts for you.
So one word I have on Ertz, and AJ, you can chime in on this too. I am fading Ertz too, unless he kind of drops in the draft, but he's not going to. My thing with him and Goddard is that Ertz is still gonna be, in my opinion, unless all the receivers die again for the Eagles, which is very possible. Unless they all die again, Goddard's not repeating what he did last year as a tight end 2 for that team. I don't see him taking over for Ertz. Like, I know there's all that narrative out there that a lot of people are saying that, but I don't buy into it yet. Ertz is still the guy, and so Ertz is gonna get his. He's still gonna be, probably a top 5-6 tight end at the end of the year, which is plenty fine if you want to pay up for it. But I'm not buying into the Goddard total hype yet. I know he finished great last year, like top 10 or 12, but I'm not believing the hype that he's going to take over for Ertz yet. I don't know. AJ, do you have any different opinion on that?
I don't think he's going to take over for him yet. I don't know if I would say that he's really going to fall off too far, though.
Because what you got to remember, all they added was Rieger, and Alshon Jeffrey's still playing.
Yeah, but Djax will be back healthy.
Yeah. Okay, so you got Djax and you have Rieger as your 2 receivers. So you don't have Jeffrey. So who's your 3rd receiver there? I think Goddard is going to be on the field a lot. 2 tight ends. Run Sanders more. I mean, that's why.
I think they're going to leave a lot of 2 tight end sets out there.
I agree.
And just spread the field out a little bit more with that. But yeah, Arcega-Whiteside, hopefully he can take the next step, and which would really just be getting off the bench, in my opinion, onto the field to catch a ball. If he can get confidence, I think he can be a little more consistent. Greg Ward was great down the stretch for them, but he's a former quarterback turned receiver because they needed somebody from Dunkin' Donuts to throw the ball to. Right. So I don't know. And I like Ward. I think he's a talented guy. I think, he could have some games where he blows up, but the Eagles receiver core to me is the ultimate best ball
Yeah.
crapshoot. So
good luck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Jay Jaw can do. Maybe because apparently he played pretty hurt last year. So I'm interested to see what he can do because a lot of people liked him last year and so did I. So we'll see. But all right, let's close this out, Bob, with talk to some specific players that I kind of highlighted from the guide that you sent me. Thank you for that, by the way. It's fantastic as always. Start off here at quarterback. I picked out one per position. Quarterback here, Russell Wilson. This one shocked me. I'm not gonna lie. I love the guy. He was great quarterback last year. Top 3 or 4 overall points. 56% clutch game rating.
Mm-hmm.
My jaw dropped, man. I was like, "What?"
Worst consistency season ever. And the sad part was he started off on wildfire.
Yeah,
which is what he never did in the past. He used to always start slow and then rip off 10 straight.
Yeah.
This year this past year he starts out with 5 or 6 straight and then just dies.
Well, so I gotta ask you though, do you think the inconsistency had a lot to do with Lockett's leg injury? And Lockett was clearly not healthy the last 7 games of the season. I mean, I know DK Metcalf kind of came on strong and that helped, but Lockett not being there really hurt Wilson, it felt like. And so I don't think I'm knocking him too much just because of that.
So I looked at this in depth because, I just thought, well, they just did a better job of running the ball. And I think it's part of it. So where the inconsistency came from was the inconsistency of attempts per game. And so there was games where he threw 50 times, and then there was 3 weeks where he barely threw over 20. And my thought is those games were the games they were controlling the clock. The running game was working well. They were ahead. He didn't need to throw the ball as much because he wasn't behind. The other games, now I didn't get into it, look at the scores and all, by thing, but the inconsistency of attempts was unbelievable. He actually had almost 100 more attempts than the year before.
Yes.
But the second half of the, and I thought, well, it's second half versus first half. Nope. First half, 32.5 attempts a game. Second half, 31.8. Not that big of a difference. But like I said, what you see is
ups and downs per game.
You see 50 attempts in a game, then 20 the next. 45 this one, 22.
Interesting.
So, So I think that's what it was, is that, he was never in a rhythm. The running game, again, the running game was fine. Carson did a good job and stayed healthy. And, so... do I expect him to bounce back and get his consistency back up? Absolutely. Is it going to be in the 70% range like it was? That's the problem is his ADP still has him as being a stud. He's still in the top 4 or 5. And I'm like, if I'm going to drop somebody in the top 4 or 5, I'm going to go for, Mahomes or Jackson. Wow, that's a little too early. But, maybe Kyler Murray, knowing that he's going to have to throw the ball a lot because he's got so much talent. And but like you said, Lockett is healthy. He'll be back. Should be a good thing. So,
all right. So moving into the running backs here, guy that's pretty interesting, player to be looking at here, and it's Joe Mixon. So across the first 7 weeks of the season, we'll call it, he was terrible. He had a bad start. He had only 2 clutch games for those first 7 weeks. Mm-hmm. But then the rest of the season, he rips off 7. So because of this, uptick in clutch games, he ended up finishing with a 56% rate again, similar to, right on with Russ. What's your take on Mixon this year, though?
Well, it's almost exactly the same. Well, I shouldn't say exactly the same. It's kind of opposite of what Russell Wilson. First 8 games of the year, Joe Mixon only had 1 game that he had more than 17 carries in a game. In the second half, the last 8 games, he only had 1 game where he had less than 17 carries in a game. They fed him the ball so much in the second half. I don't know if you remember, the game I remember the best was the game that they were losing to the Ravens 49-6, and they fed him the ball 32 times in that game.
I'm like, we're just gonna lose here.
What are you doing? Now I didn't have Mixon. I think I was playing against Mixon in a game, and maybe that's why I was so pissed off. And I'm like, I saw he had 30 carries, like 100 and some yards, and some touchdowns, and I'm like, what? Why did you give him the ball 30 times in a game that you're losing? And they lost I think it was 49-20 or something. I mean, it wasn't even close. They fed him the ball so much, and they did it the rest of the year that way. So that's why he had the peak games it did. Now, what does that say for this year? Well, you got a rookie quarterback. They obviously love to feed him the ball, so you got to have love. You got to give Mixon some love. The question is, with a rookie quarterback, as much as we're not, as much as we, some of us, I'm a big Red Rifle fan, but, not everybody loved Andy Dalton and company there. So, but at least he was good enough to keep the defenses honest. Can Joe Burrow do that and not let 8 or 9 in the box against, somebody like, with Joe Mixon? That's where it becomes an issue. That's why I'm a little bit kind of taken back on whether or not I want to invest a first-round pick in Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I just wonder how much the the coaching staff change there really mattered, and how much that's going to carry forward. So that plays a big part in it for me.
Right.
I kind of bought into the second half again, maybe to my own dismay, because I bought into it last year and burned myself in a couple of best ball leagues because of it. So, oh well. Lesson not learned, maybe. So, all right, over to receiver here. Got an interesting pair to talk about. So we got Stefon Diggs and John Brown, now teammates. Very interesting to me because you look at Diggs and his consistency rate was 60 last year on the Vikings. Now John Brown's was 87. Yet Diggs' ranking ADP is way higher than John Brown's. Now, probably should be because Diggs should be the wide receiver 1 there, right? But how much are we overvaluing Diggs a little bit and undervaluing John Brown, or what do you think here?
Well, I think they're going to be obviously a lot closer this year. The one thing I don't expect is, I don't expect John Brown to be at 80%, but I also don't expect him to be at 50. I don't expect Diggs to be that bad, but I also don't expect him to be super high. Right. It's hard to tell. I know that, there's been a lot of off-season workouts with Josh Allen and Diggs, which is a good thing. The only thing that scares me about Diggs, it always scared me about Leonard Fournette, is, at what point does he lose his head? What point does Diggs get pissed off because they throw 2 touchdowns at John Brown and he doesn't see the ball enough? Because that's the way he was in Minnesota. That's what concerns me, is anybody who's got kind of a mental scenario like that, I'm always a little bit scared of. So my thought is, if Diggs starts getting bitchy, well, then guess what? Allen's going to throw the ball to John Brown and Beasley like he did last year. So that's what kind of I see happening, that, I don't think Diggs is going to be that consistent, because I think there's going to be these up and down weeks where, he's going to get a little edgy, and then the next week he won't see the ball as much. And I'm a little frightened of that scenario. I haven't drafted Diggs at all yet.
Yeah, I mean, I stay away from this receiving core, just mainly based off the fact that I don't really trust Josh Allen as a passer. I had John Brown in the best ball league last year, and it was fantastic. But as much as I liked that, I don't. And I like Josh Allen overall as a quarterback for fantasy because of the legs. But as a passer in the receiving game, nah, I pass.
Yeah, I don't know any Diggs shares, I guess, if you want to call them that, on any of my leagues this year, which is kind of surprising to me. But for same reason, I feel like I just kind of soured on this receiving core for some reason and just wanted to bypass him altogether, even though I do like Diggs. I have owned him in the past, but maybe he burned me too many times in Minnesota. So once you get on that list, you're not coming off. So I'm moving on to tight end here. We don't have necessarily one specific player, but thinking of guys, towards the end of the draft, like your Gesicki's, your Johnny Smith, your Irv Smith. When I think of these next tight ends, that could be a good breakout candidate and be a fantasy star. That's the kind of guys I'm looking at there. But, what in your consistency rankings helps us find these next guys?
Well, what I've always seen in the past is this scenario is tight ends kind of before their breakout year usually first off, obviously they've come out of nowhere, not come out of nowhere, but they just haven't been as good as they have in the past, or they haven't broken out like they should. And Gesicki and Jonnu Smith are a good one. Er's a little young. What I like to look at is, that end of last year, how did they come on? Did they start gelling a little bit with, their quarterback and that kind of stuff? So Gesicki last year, 4 out of 6 of the last 6 games, 67%. Nice upswing. Jonnu Smith, 75%. Same thing. Nice upswing. Irv Smith obviously didn't have a lot of clutch games, so there's nothing there for me to kind of buy into at this point of being worthy of a breakout yet. Plus, Carson didn't use them that much, tight ends that much last year, and they still have Kyle Rudolph.
Yep.
The guy I like, of course, put up 6 out of 6 over the last 6 games was Tyler Higbee. So, there's a guy there that, you kind of have to I thought he would go much higher because I thought everybody would buy into, quote, the hype of what happened, but nobody really did. So he's actually going at a pretty fair price, ADP wise, which is nice. So any of those three, I think are, good backups to choose. If you want to go and get, like a Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, those kind of folks, in that 6th, 7th round, and then maybe grab one of those guys as your backup. I think all of them could prove to be something worthy. I mean, just 2 years ago, George Kittle did that. Went like 6 for 6 for the last 6 of the year, and I put him as my breakout tight end for the next year. And and as they say, the rest is history. Did the same thing with Antonio Gates with it. Did the same thing with Jimmy Graham when he broke out in New Orleans. So that usually works out well. Now, it doesn't always get as big as those guys did from one year to the next, but it's at least a tool that I've used to identify those.
Yeah, I love Gesicki this year. Liked him at the end of last year too. But I like him as a late target this year. People are buying into it a little more and more though, so he's not the big value that you could get a month ago. People are starting to remember who he was.
Right.
I want to ask you though. Well, I'll let AJ get. He just texted me and said he's got a follow up. So maybe it's the same question.
So you mentioned Hunter Henry, and it's not necessarily related to him specifically, but with him and Keenan Allen, both being solid players, solid options. Now they lose their quarterback that they've had for so long. Kind of goes back to the question from earlier too. Is that more of an xConsistency thing that you're looking at, or are they dropping down more because of the unknown of Tyrod and what he's going to bring to the table, if he's even going to be the starter all season, which is probably unlikely. But I mean, how do you look at guys like that?
Well, see, I look at, one, did the coaching and the offensive coordinator and the schemes and all that stuff change? No, all they're changing is the quarterback. Is it nice when you have the consistency of having the same quarterback for the last, 13 years or whatever Philip Rivers was there? Certainly. But kind of like the same realm that I was talking about with Julian Edelman and James White in New England. You still have the same coach. You still have the same guy who knows who's the most effective guys are on the team and who the plays need to go to, to move the ball down the field on a consistent basis. And it's going to be the same way for Tyrod Taylor in for the Chargers. It's going to be Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, and Eckler coming out of the backfield. Yeah. Those three guys should be in his sight on every single play. Yes, Mike Williams every once in a while will go deep to stretch the defense a little bit, that kind of stuff. But, those three guys should see, in my opinion, if with the same coaches, same setup, that they should be going, should be seeing the majority of the targets and touches in the game.
All right.
Joey, so my question was, I wanted to ask you about somebody like Hayden Hurst, right? So he didn't get quite the biggest opportunity in Baltimore, shined a couple times here and there, but wasn't anything fantastic. Now goes to a great situation, right? I don't think anybody disagrees that going to Atlanta and filling in that tight end role there isn't good for him. But like, obviously not the most consistent guy because he never got the opportunity in Baltimore. So how do you kind of factor that in with like ranking him type of thing?
You just it's tough. Here's the thing, Hooper every year was supposed to break out, never did. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Then did last year. Mm-hmm. So he obviously was very talented. They just didn't give him the ball because you've got guys like Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and Wes Sanu was there for a while. So now here comes Hurst, who's, a talented player, but obviously wasn't good enough to earn his keep to be the star tight end in, Baltimore with a decent quarterback. I mean, Mark Andrews did fine with Lamar Jackson. Why didn't Hurst? So it's one of those things where it's kind of like it's just kind of uneasy for me to go, well, Hurst will walk in and just be a stud. Well, maybe, and I know that Matt Ryan's been raving about him in press conferences and things like that, but I'm just a little bit leery. Now, the good thing is Hurst, in some drafts have been going early, some have not. Like in this auction, he hasn't wet that I've been working on. So, it'll be interesting to see how much he goes for. I haven't drafted him yet because I'm either Hunter Henry or Evan Ingram in round 7, or I'm waiting and getting Jack Doyle in round 12. And so if Hurst is there, I might get him as a backup, but I really haven't jumped on him because I'm still not 100% sold that he's going to match Hooper's numbers, and that's what he needs to do to, kind of be worthy of a tight end 1 for your team.
Yeah. I don't think he needs to match Hooper's numbers. I mean, Hooper was literally tight end 1 through like 10, 12 weeks last year, whatever it was, until he got hurt. So I don't know about that. And he's going in the back end of the tight end 1 range. So I am all over Hayden Hurst. Like,
yeah. No, I'm not saying it's a bad pick either. I'm just saying that, sometimes you kind of look at it and go, oh, well, and when you have your favorites and you don't like that, he's your favorite, one of your favorites, obviously. So, you're looking at him going, okay, I like the value I'm getting for him. And you feel that he will put up some very solid numbers. I can't argue with you. He certainly could. He could put up Hooper numbers, if he stays healthy the whole year. He might, at least if he can match the total, he didn't play as many games. Right. Certainly may be worth it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't get him, I'm fine with the Gesicki's. I'm fine with the Doyles. I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I'm good with that range of tight ends as my guy, because I don't want to pay up for tight end this year because I feel like it's so much deeper. I mean, I just will almost never buy up for the Kittles and the Kelsey's. I don't pay up for them in the first, second rounds, third rounds, or whatever it is for tight ends. I know they're awesome. I just don't do it. My draft strategy is way different than that. So, and then at that point, like, do I want to go in on the Ingrams and the Henrys and things like that? Yeah, they're good, but they've got big question marks with injuries and things like that. So I go after. This year I've just decided I'm going after the late guys. And it's worked out for me so far in a bunch of my drafts that I've done, all these early industry drafts, Scott Fishbowl and things like that. Mm-hmm. So my teams have looked pretty nice with these tight ends that hopefully will work out for me.
All right. Cool. So. No, I'm in.
So, all right, AJ, you got anything else to add? Or
no, I just wanted to say that hopefully we'll be squaring off here in the Raz Bowl.
That's right. I forgot
you're in the same division here. And then in Scott Fish, we're in the same, I guess, league. You're in a different division, but we're in the same one there.
League.
Yes. So,
and hopefully we'll all get to see everybody next year at the Fantasy Football Expo in August. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping it happens, man. I'm gonna put on my calendar right after this. The second weekend of August, man. Hopefully this crap is gone and we can all travel for real.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Well, Thanks for coming on, man. Let everybody know where they can find you and what you guys got in store on the site and stuff.
You got it. So Bob_Lung, just like it's written in the nice little chalkboard behind AJ there. Very nice. Thank you. Brian Dawkins on the right. My favorite guy ever drove for Hall of Fame. So anyway, yeah. So Bob_Lung on Twitter. Big Guy Fantasy Sports is the website for all your consistency information, not only for your draft, but also all season long. We update the stats every week so you can see who the most consistent players are in your league week by week. And of course, get the 2020 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide on Amazon. Just search for that word, and of course, you'll find it. And you can also get it on the website as well. So again, guys, thanks for having me. It's been an honor, and looking forward to doing this again sometime.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good stuff, man.
Thanks,
Yeah, we'll
man.
we'll put a link to your guide in the show notes so you guys can find it on YouTube and the site and things like that. So
awesome, thanks.
Good stuff. All right, man. Have a good night, man. Good talking again.
Dude, take care.
All right, thanks, Bob.
All right, AJ. I really got nothing to add. All I can say is go O's, man. They are tearing it up right now. Unbelievable. I would have never
And
guessed.
of course,
it.
they're playing the Phillies. I mean, it's like,
yeah.
I'm so far behind
Why I said
on text messages and everything. Like I've got a group text for a bunch of my guy friends at home are talking about the Phillies and how they suck and that their bullpen is garbage and this and that. The whole season sucks. I'm so as you could see from my great updating skills of my depth charts, I'm so behind on baseball in general as it is, but I'm just not into it this year. I don't know. I mean, I didn't even know that they were playing them until I looked at it and saw it. And then, Heather's dad called it the other day and said something about, oh, yeah, O's had a great game. And this such and such had a great stop at second or third base. I don't remember what it was, but just like, yeah, who are they playing? What's going on?
TV and I don't have cable anymore, so I can't get Masson because Angeles is the worst and doesn't have it streaming available anywhere. So
you gotta get the MLB package then.
But I can't. I'm blacked out because MLB sucks too, and they won't let people watch the
right.
stuff
It's not on that either.
So it's like whatever. I'll figure it out another way. Anyway, that's all I had to add. I just wanted to poke the Phillies. Anyway, all right, that's all we got for the show. Next week we're gonna do a live mock draft on air, and we're gonna have a bunch of guys from Fantasy Six Pack on with us, and we'll get through as many rounds as we can before it just gets too late. So join in then, and we'll figure this out. It'll be fun though. So
yeah, that's gonna be something.
Wow, way to pump it up, AJ.
It's gonna be awesome, guys. Get your beers, get your 6-packs, get whatever you're going through.
Do it for 3 hours, jackass. It'll be fine.
No.
Jeez. Make some pick. We'll analyze a few. We'll be good. Let's let you guys see how we're thinking on the clock live. It'll be fun. Get in the minds of the Fantasy Six Pack staff. So, all right, guys, that's all we got. Have a good night.
See you.